right, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Lippincott. I'm the Program Director for the Library Publishing Coalition. We are here welcoming today Hugh McGuire from Pressbooks, who's here to talk to us about open networked textbooks, building an ecosystem. Hugh is a literary technologist and founder of Librivox, an open source publisher of public domain audiobooks, and Pressbooks.com, an online book production platform. And Pressbooks is being used by a variety of open textbook projects, including BC Campus in Canada, the University of Minnesota, Lumen Learning, and others. Pressbooks recently launched Pressbooks EDU, focused on academia and in particular open textbooks. Hugh is going to talk to us about open networked textbooks, and then he has also some slides about Pressbooks in particular, and he welcomes questions and comments throughout the presentation. The easiest way to do that, if you're on the computer connection, is to submit questions through the chat box. There's a little chat window that you should see on your screen. If you type questions into that chat box, I will relay them to Hugh. Otherwise, you'll note that you're being muted as you come into the conference call. And if there are questions, particularly at the end of the presentation, if you'd like to ask questions over the microphone, you can unmute yourself and ask questions through there. But chat does tend to be easiest, especially for questions that you have during Hugh's talk. Hugh, and I should also just mention that today's call is being recorded, should you wish to go back and view it later, and I'll make the link available to you all after the webinar. So Hugh, thank you very much for joining us, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah, and it looks like there's a pretty good crew here. I assume everyone's a librarian, but I guess there may be other people lurking around. Actually, Sarah, was it an open invitation?
It's just for LPC members. We may have some university press staff on the line in addition to librarians. Okay,
good stuff. So as Sarah mentioned, I guess I have two projects that I think lead me towards an awful lot of excitement. I just saw that chat note. There are some non-librarians as well. So I have two projects in my background that lead me to an awful lot of excitement about where open textbooks can go. And that's going to be my focus, just talking about some experience I've had and in the past, and how that is informing my thoughts on excitement about open textbook potential, and particularly what I think perhaps is missing, or what we as the community who are interested in that topic can start thinking about towards building a more vibrant world around open textbooks. So I'm going to start talking about what is, in internet terms, becoming ancient history, although it's still relevant today, which is the founding of Librivox back in 2005, which I started just on a bit of a whim. And the idea was I started it with a little blog post that said, can a group of volunteers get together, can collaborate to make a library of public domain audiobooks, so books that are in the public domain with no copyright, and can we somehow collaborate to create a library of these things? Going back 2005 is a long time ago. I guess it was the early days of Web 2.0, and just this idea of collaborative work on the web was kind of new, and this idea that volunteers would be doing all sorts of stuff that we didn't expect them to do on the web was new as well. But at the time, there were a few really important things happening. First of all, actually, maybe I'll just quickly go for those of you who don't know about Librivox. I'll just explain a little bit the way it works. It's a volunteer community. There's a web platform. I think I've got the website open here that you should be able to see on the screen. This community works together to create public domain audiobooks and put them up on the web for free, so they're downloaded all over the world. We've produced well over 8,000 public domain audiobooks over the last decade, and the latest data I have from the Internet Archive, where we store our audiobooks, is they've been downloaded 420 million times. So it's been a big, vibrant project, actually driven by a relatively small community of volunteers. And I just want to talk about some of the components that went into LibriVox working the way it did. So first of all, there was this new thing on the block called podcasting, which really just meant people being able to easily record audio and put it up on the web and have other people download and listen to it. And I've always been a fan of public radio, to a certain degree audiobooks, but really it was more public radio was my interest. And just this notion that a swath of amateurs all over the world could start to record audio was really exciting to me. And when I was thinking about that, the notion of audiobooks seemed like a really interesting place to dedicate some of that engagement. So podcasting was the first sort of plank of LibriVox. The second thing was the open source software movement, and that has two components. One, it meant that software to, for instance, create audio was available and free or very cheap, and that was relatively new at the time. So you could download some software and start recording on your any kind of home computer, and that was a new idea. The second thing was that open source software had this wonderful and very exciting model to me, which was this idea that people could start to collaborate on the web to create something, software in particular in this case, but that the drivers for doing that weren't specifically they were getting paid to do it or economic return for that particular bit of work they were doing, but that some other kinds of drivers that were quite mysterious at the time. And I think there's probably been a lot more study about what is driving people in the open source world now. But that model of collaboration was very exciting to me, this idea that we could get together people just to a community of interest around a topic online and start building something. So that was the second plank. And that idea that this could be applied outside of just software was made clear by Wikipedia, which took that sort of software model but applied it to creating a resource, an information resource that the world could access. It's hard to remember now. I guess actually librarians, I know there are some librarians who in the university world who aren't too crazy about Wikipedia, but regardless of what you think about it within the institution of academia itself, it's very clear that Wikipedia has become the first stop of information for general information for most of the world's population, probably. And it's hard to remember back in 2005 how radical that seemed, whereas now it's really a fixture. It's been, in the top 5 websites, most visited websites in the world for the last probably 8 or 9 years, I would think. Now, what was interesting too about Wikipedia was their approach. It was sort of a software approach, but the idea was to build a structure that allowed people to collaborate around the creation of these information texts. And I think what's exciting about that was just that when people got to Wikipedia, that catchphrase that they have, which is Wikipedia, the encyclopedia anyone can edit, was so revolutionary at the time and so obvious, and people fall on two sides about what they think about Wikipedia, but that notion that anyone could edit it was such a clear statement of what the platform did and what it was trying to do, and it excited certainly enough people to turn it into the powerhouse that it's been. The last plank, I would guess, in the creation of LibriVox was the free culture movement, and particularly Lawrence Lessig's book, Free Culture, and this idea that copyright as it existed in the pre-digital world was a little bit too rigid for where we were going in the digital world. And I guess the Lessig had the insight to articulate the 3 key principles, I think, that underpin this shift. And one is that innovation has always come from sharing ideas. Number 2, that these new technologies, particularly digital on the one hand, which allow infinite copying, and the web, which now allows infinite sharing, that these two technologies were going to make it easier than ever to share ideas. And the final insight was that at least some of the world would think that these new technologies and the idea of sharing ideas would be a powerful and important and positive change, at least in part of our information ecosystem in the world. And so this idea that some people would be embracing this notion of sharing ideas rather than clamping down on them was absolutely important. So this is a bit of the history lesson around my personal experience with LibriVox. And the idea, again, is that the existence of software to make the creation of audio possible, and that software being easy and cheap or free, was absolutely important. Web platforms for two reasons. One, the collaboration among groups of people, and two, web platforms to share the fruits of that labor. That these three items are what came together to make LibriVox what it is. And again, LibriVox was a clear sort of manifestation of the ideal or the mission of LibriVox, which is to make all public domain books available for free on the internet, which remains the mission today. So that background led us to this huge community, or perhaps not a huge community, but a very active community of several thousand volunteers who are dedicated to making free public domain audiobooks. And they're driven by lots of different things. Some are driven by idealism, and some are driven by the interest in practicing the art of recording audiobooks. A number of LibriVox volunteers have gone on to, or actually were in the past, professional audio recorders. So there's an awful lot of different drivers behind that, but regardless, we've created this huge catalog of public domain books. Actually, let's just look on the site here. There you go. Latest number catalog works is 9,125. And we average, that's about right, about 60 to 100 works catalog every month. Here we can see some more data. There's about 35 languages represented, only a relatively small number, but 1,200 works outside of the English language, and 7,130 readers have participated in LibriVox. And the collection, everything is in the public domain. So we've got Thucydides' History of Peloponnesian War. We have Darwin's Origin of the Species. We have Austen's Pride and Prejudice, Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, Don Quixote, War and Peace, Ulysses. So all the classics. And then if you look at this page here, I don't know, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here? A page, catalog page. I've got the chat going to come up and say yes?
Yes, Hugh.
Yes, good. Okay. So you also end up getting all sorts of strange kinds of things that you wouldn't expect. Here's Treasure Island, which you would expect, and well, my favorite book in the collection is The Romance of Rubber by the United States Rubber Company, which was done in 1908 and is a tract about promoting the wonders of rubber. So what's kind of interesting is how amazing the appetites of people are, and bizarre and strange to do things like recording The Romance of Rubber. There are books in Finnish and Old English and Javanese and Japanese and Chinese and all sorts of other languages. And these books, to get them into the world, it's not just a matter of someone just recording and saying, here, LibriVox, take this. There's a whole process that goes into it where the books are selected. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about it first, but a book, someone says, I would like to do this book. Someone goes off and checks to make sure that the copyright situation is clear in the United States so that the book can indeed live in the LibriVox catalog, that it's in the public domain. The book's the audio might get edited by someone else, proof listened by another person. The whole process is managed by someone else called what we call a book coordinator. And finally, a cataloger takes that, what we call a meta coordinator, takes the final project, puts it up into our web catalog system, adds a whole lot of metadata, and pushes it out into the web. And so there's this whole network of volunteers behind the system. And I'm just going to, again, poke at show you guys. So can I change the page here? So here, for instance, is a catalog page for one of our finished books, Lucy Maud Montgomery's short stories. You can get the book in different kinds of ways. We have some metadata here, each chapter, who read the chapter. So in this case, there's different kinds of readers, a whole bunch of different readers. And then we link out to other kinds of metadata about the book as well. I want to show you the Librivox Forum. So we've been running on an old PHP BB forum for years and years and years. And this is where the actual work happens. And you can see here a list of suggested books, new project launch, and then readers wanted. So this is where you've got a book and you are asking new readers to join in. Here's what happens on the new project launch page. There's a few guiding principles, so some documentation to help you get started. And then when you post something here, someone's job is to come and take a look and make sure that the copyright situation is okay. And then here is a whole list of the books that are in production right now. You can see there's a fantasy steampunk book, there's an instruction book, there's a mystery book, social romance, biography, science, etc., etc. I don't see any. I think there's a whole separate forum for foreign language books. And then this is what a book that's in production looks like. There's a whole web interface here, just a simple forum interface where lots of data about how to get going, how to get started in the process. And then we have this management system here that allows us to assign a reader to a particular chapter, a listen URL when it's ready to get proof listened, different statuses, whether it's assigned or it's still open. So if any of you guys want to read Werner and Hutton Part 1, which is 2,900 words, for this project, please send me an email and I'll point you in the right direction. And then down here, people sort of post and say, I'm ready to do Chapter 2 or Chapter 15 or whatever it is. Right, so that is Librivox, and I wanted to talk about this because I think that Librivox has a lot to say, or the experience that Librivox has had is very relevant for the open textbook world. And I have a half-written article that I hope to finish in the next week or so, whose title is Where Are Open Textbooks? You know, we know that these technologies for collaboration and creation have been around for a few years now. The notion of open textbooks have been around for a while. And so there's kind of this question of why haven't we seen a flowering of open textbook proliferation? It's clear that the textbook industry is ripe for a different approach, a new approach, an open approach. You know, if you just look at the costs of textbooks, the way they're clamped down, the way we use them, the way information is replicated from one textbook to another, but in different kinds of ways. The old story that everyone knows about the physics, which I certainly experienced in my university days, the physics textbook that you have to get the new edition because they've changed around the questions at the back of each chapter that the professor is going to assign, and all these kinds of strange reasons that we have a textbook world that looks the way it does. It certainly feels like it's time for a change and a new approach to textbooks. And so there's kind of this question that I've been asking myself and hopefully thinking about how to answer, which is why haven't we seen a real flowering of an open textbook ecosystem? And I know that we've seen some really interesting projects. There's Flat World Knowledge that came and sort of went. I think they're mostly gone now, at least in the open textbook world. There's certainly OpenStax that's been putting out some great textbooks over the last number of years. There's Wikibooks that's kind of been around for a while, and no one's quite, but never really took off, certainly not in academia. And so a number of years ago, my answer to why we didn't have a really vibrant open textbook network was that we don't quite have the right technologies to make these books. There's no real software system to allow us to create books easily. And I guess I'm going to slip into a bit of a promo now, but I just want to do this to show you what Pressbooks does and how we had decided to try to answer that question of making a simple online system to create textbooks. I won't dwell on this too long, but I just kind of want to give you a sense of where I'm coming from in thinking about that as one part of the problem that needs answering for the creation of open textbooks. So Pressbooks, again, just check in maybe, Sarah, if you can let me know whether this page is showing up properly and is visible on everyone's screen.
Yep, it's showing for me.
Okay, good stuff. So Pressbooks is a simple online book production tool, really important. It does PDF that's ready for print, EPUB, MOBI, as well as web versions that are fully live and native to the web from the get-go. So the idea is that you get camera-ready, designed interior PDFs ready to go to print or print on demand, MOBI files that are optimized for all your Kindle, and EPUB files that look good on iBooks and Kobo and Nook, etc. The other thing about Pressbooks is all the files are in one place, so it's easily managed and edited by non-technical staff. And this, I guess this deck is designed mostly for publishers, so I won't go into too much detail. But here's the interface of Pressbooks. So it's built on top of the WordPress platform, so it's something that a lot of people are very familiar with. So there's menus on the side here and at the top, and it's a relatively familiar interface. You can upload docx files, and then once you've done that, you can arrange your text. So here's Dubliners, and we kind of build this so that each book, you might say, is a blog, and each post is a chapter, for those of you familiar with the blogging interface. So this is Dubliner, so if you want to go in, you can edit your chapter and get right in there and edit, again, in a familiar interface. We've got templates, so once you've got an interface, or once you've got your content in, you just apply a template and it exports and looks good in all the outputs, and you can change your templates and change the output look. And then you go to export, and you have a button where you can just export your book, and all the formats come out the other end. So Pressbooks, I'm just going to show you a quick handful of samples of the outputs. These are all the PDF outputs, so it's important to note that the web and EPUB outputs are similarly designed to this, but these are the PDF ready to go to the printer. So here's just a straight novel. Here's something that's a bit more non-fiction-y. There's Dubliners. This was a nonfiction book by someone talking about his experience at University of Notre Dame. We have done work with a number of university presses. I think I've seen a couple on the call who look like they may be Pressbooks users, but this is some stuff we did with the University of Minnesota Press. So they did a series of books. I guess they're still doing the series of books with us. Short digital first, but well designed. You know, we handle footnotes and images and captions, and have the running heads and pagination and all that handled well. Fortress Press is another scholarly monograph publisher that works with us. they've moved over the majority of their publications to Pressbooks system. So this is, again, lots of footnotes. They need Hebrew and Ancient Greek in their system, so we handle that. We did some work with University of British Columbia Press, doing a custom template for them. So this goes into Pressbooks first, and then it comes out looking like this, and you know that it's going to look like this every time you press export. And so we've done some work with Wall Street Journal. This is a bit fancier, I guess, in the way the PDFs look. And some more standard nonfiction. I'm going to try to get through this quickly. There's Newsweek Europe. We did some work with them with a custom template as well. They wanted something that was a simple template for print on demand, EPUBs, and MOBIs. And so we built this for them. Interesting. So now I'm going to start to talk a little bit more in the direction of textbooks, which is what we're talking about now. So the interesting thing about textbooks, and depending on what the subject is they may well need to be updated on a relatively frequent basis. And so we have a legal publisher we work with, and they need to put out new versions of their books every 6 months or so. So here's example, because they're following case law as that changes. We've done a fair bit with corporate learning materials producers. So here's an example. This is a more, I guess you might say, fancy output. This was produced on Pressbooks as well. I'm going to speed through this, and here's another complex output, bit fancier looking. But so this is the kind of thing that can be done on a Pressbooks platform. And the important thing is that every design template comes out in ebook and Kindle and Android versions as well. Okay, so the thing I want to talk about, so that there's this component, which is this need for tools that people can use. Pressbooks is one. There are other ones out there. But that need, when I go back to my days of Librivox, or if you look at Wikipedia, the idea of having a place where the thing that you're doing can be produced. And in the case of Librivox, there was some free software called Audacity that is what a lot of people used when we started, and it just meant that the barrier to entry was very low. You didn't have complex, very expensive software to buy to create your audio, but it was right there, easy to download and use. And so that was kind of the inspiration behind Pressbooks, was to, in the world of books, I'd sort of done this in audio with Librivox, but in the world of books, we needed platforms and software to be able to create book outputs easily and well. So that's kind of where we are right now, but I think there's a bigger issue when we look at open textbooks, and that is building the network and platform and community around the creation of open textbooks. And this is what I'm starting to turn my attention to right now, because I think it's very exciting. I think we're poised to really transform the way academic educational resources are provided, and I think there's just a missing ingredient there, and that is a platform that would help foster that ecosystem more broadly in a more standardized kind of way, so that there could be wider collaboration on topics of interest, where new projects can be found and joined, where reviewers or editors or illustrators could be found for particular projects, and if you needed something that people could find the sorts of things that are needed. Their projects, new text. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Your audio is a little bit fuzzy now. I'm not sure if you did anything, if there's anything you might be able to fix easily.
Okay. Is it still fuzzy?
It is. I'm getting a little bit of a kind of an echo, and you're breaking up just a little bit.
Okay. Let me just do let's see. that any better? Yeah. Bandwidth degradation any better, people? Does that sound good? No? No?
That's still, yeah, it's still, actually, you're sounding a little bit better. You just sounded better right now, so maybe it's resolved itself.
Yeah, I find usually at the half-hour mark on these things,
Yep.
software says that's enough, you're talking too long. So how am I doing now? Should I
It sounds better.
hang up and
you can
check
continue.
back in? Or
No, I
going?
think you can continue.
Yeah.
It sounds better now.
Okay. So let me, not quite sure where I finished off, but looking at what's going on with Open Textbook right now, I see a lot of really great momentum, a lot of projects that are popping up. We're talking to the Open Textbook Network. There's the stuff that Lumen Learning's doing, BC Campus, a lot of little projects that Pressbooks is involved in one way or another. But I think that what's missing when I think of this from a global ecosystem point of view is the sort of standardization and platform that helps get people involved in the creation of open textbooks and sort of clarifying the adoption as well. But I'm interested mostly in that creation part, because I think if we can get a really cohesive, passionate movement behind the creation and sort of bring people together around that is going to drive adoption in the longer run. And so again, I'll just sort of repeat, sorry for those of you who may have heard this already, if the sound wasn't too bad, but the idea of being able to post that there's a new project looking for expertise, let's say reviewing in psychology or something like that, so that new projects can be announced on a particular topic that a book is in production, where reviewers or editors or illustrators or proofreaders or copy editors or whatever it is that you need could come and coalesce around a project, where collaboration is made clear and easy, and where that process of getting a book from an idea in a prof's mind to a finished product is clear, well articulated, developed, and smooth. And so I think that, and then once you finalize that book, that there's somewhere for it to go that makes sense, that's clear, that's obvious to the world, instead of having, again, these kind of little libraries of public domain, or not public domain, but open textbooks that are spread around the world, so that there can be kind of a cohesive collection of these things coming together in a single place. And where we have a sense of shared understanding of how the metadata around these open textbooks ought to be developed and pushed out into the world. So to me, when I look at Wikipedia, that was an effort to structure the collaboration around creation of a general knowledge resource, and was hugely successful at doing that, because it built a process and a platform for people to collaborate on one side and then consume the stuff on the other side. And likewise, Librivox was an effort to structure the collaboration around the collection, the creation of audiobooks and dissemination of those audiobooks. And if you look at the front of Librivox, we've always had these two choices, read and listen. And there's a really old website from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that I don't think is live anymore, but it was called HayNet, and it was for farmers to post either if they wanted hay or had hay, and literally it was a one page with a text box, and you had two links. One was have hay, and the other was want hay. And I've always thought that was such a brilliant articulation of how the web can work, that it's, create or ready to share or want to consume, want to read, want to listen. So I think that we've seen with Wikipedia and LibriVox, two particular projects, although there are certainly many more in the universe, where this relatively small collection of volunteers, staff, or whatever it is, collaborate to create what is a hugely valuable resource for the human world as a whole. Hang on, my phone is ringing. And I think that we've seen with Wikipedia, that wasn't one of you calling me to tell me that it's my audio's off again, is it?
No.
No, okay. And when I look at Wikipedia, I think that had the possibility to, reach such a wide amount of people. But when I look at open textbooks, the sort of, I try not to be too idealistic or moralistic about it, but the moral imperative there, the moral excitement, the kind of idealistic vision of what open textbooks could be, this open, accessible resource for all students in the world to use, is just such a powerful notion. And I think that if we can get this right between all the different players, between the librarians and the professors and the students and software developers, et cetera, if we can get this together in such a way that we really build the right kinds of platforms and kinds of mechanisms to help people participate in the creation of open textbooks, that it's going to be such a hugely powerful movement and change and a helpful thing for accessibility to academic knowledge and information. And so, as I say, I'm actively starting to look at this as a direction for some of the things that we're doing, and very excited to get some feedback from you guys about this. And I saw one chat question come in, but it's just disappeared. Let me see if I can see that again. Yeah, what does getting this right look like? So Anita Waltz from Virginia Tech asked me, can you talk more about what getting this right looks like? So I think that my answer, I have that there's kind of clear data we could point to. One is how many new textbooks are getting created. Are we seeing a growth in the creation of open textbooks? Number two is how many classrooms and students are getting exposed to open textbooks, so are they getting adopted? And then number three would sort of be a question about just kind of general engagement of a community. So you'd want to see either a growing community or a healthy community around that creation. And I know both LibriVox and Wikipedia have a certain amount of it's a slightly different model to what we see in open textbooks, where in a lot of cases universities are incentivizing professors to create these things. But the idea or notion that what we want to see is a growing collection of open textbooks, a growing adoption of open textbooks, and generally a viable, long-term, and healthy ecosystem around that process. I'm seeing a couple of specific questions coming in. So, Sarah, is it okay if I just answer these private chat questions that are coming in, or do you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So,
yep, and there are a couple that came through the whole group as well that I can relay as well.
Okay. Yep. So if there's anything that needs to get asked. So now begins the interaction time, I guess. And so please feel free to shoot questions off, and I'll try to answer them. There were some specific questions about templates and themes in Pressbooks, and can you change them or start from scratch and create your own? So the answer is yes, you can change them. You can change. You can choose different themes. Yes, you can change the specific ones. Can you create them from scratch? The answer is yes, but if you want things to not look terrible in Mobi, EPUB, print output, and web, there's 4 different areas of expertise that need to be managed carefully in the process. So it's not a trivial thing to get your templates looking good on the outputs. eWidgets, interactivity, audio, video, we're just about to support EPUB 3, so the answer is yes, that all that will be supported in Pressbooks going forward. Another question about Pressbooks, can it handle multilingual content? And the answer is absolutely. We support all sorts of different kooky languages as well as regular languages. So I say kooky because we have one client, which is Fortress Press that I mentioned, which every once in a while says we need to support Coptic and we need to support some ancient Syriac language that doesn't exist anymore. So we've worked hard to make sure we support that. Another question, why not WordPress proper and call it a day? And the answer is you don't get any of the outputs, PDF, EPUB, MOBI, and the need to structure your content in a particular kind of way is the difference. And that is the end of the questions at the moment. So I will, I'm going to shoot out a question and see if anyone wants to answer there. So you guys are all part of the Library Publishing Coalition. And I'm curious about how many of you are actively either starting or engaging in or getting support for, or basically where the open textbook world is for those of you out there in your institutions. And silence.
I can say this is Sarah. Just based on what I know about our institutions, there are quite a number who are publishing textbooks, either that have direct involvement in actually providing the infrastructure and some editorial support for publishing textbooks. There are a number, including some pretty pioneering initiatives that established funds for publishing textbooks, so like competitive micro grants for faculty to publish or adopt their own open textbooks for their classes. And it's definitely something that is picking up steam and aligns with a lot of library publishing principles and the kind of service principles that libraries operate under.
Right. So are any of you guys against open textbooks? I don't know. I'm just trying to feel out, is it a yeah. So getting sort of feedback coming. Love them. Different faculty are creating textbooks. Yeah. So here's John Barneson writing that. That they've got Pressbooks installed, but taking a long time to navigate the political, policy, social issues. Yeah, I think so. It looks to me like there's a lot of political support and not just political support, but sort of institutional support that has to happen for it to fly in universities. Without that, then yeah, I'm looking at someone else. Issues of financial sustainability are important. I wonder, that's an interesting issue. And Michigan publishing person who maybe I know, maybe I don't. Can you talk a bit more about that? Hi, Jason. Do you mean that sort of maintaining the textbook up to date over time? Oh, yeah, pay for making the stuff, right? Yeah. Right. So just the cost. So what we've seen is universities who are providing grants to or some kind of incentives, usually financial incentives to professors for creation of open textbooks. Yeah. So that money's got to come from somewhere, certainly.
Couple of other comments that have come directly to me that I'll just relay. That Grand Valley State University, they're working on some university initiatives to support open textbooks more broadly on their campus, and right now they're working with a few specific faculty to publish.
Right.
And Kansas State University also says they're working with a few specific faculty to publish textbooks. So it seems like a lot of initiatives in the kind of pilot stages are working with a few a few textbooks and maybe, looking to expand more systematically, but I think highlighting the concerns that Jason brought up as well of the sustainability of some of those larger programs.
Yes, there's a nice note. It's to everyone. It says Wake Forest is trying to make a new meme. 99 is the new free. So I don't know if that means that free textbooks should be $99 or that that $99 is still pretty expensive. So for those of you who are sort of engaging actively in open textbook world, are you guys seeing, so there's this twin, let's say, problem or twin challenge of, twin challenge, WPK, yes, okay, everyone else can see the funny notes from WPK, that's good. The twin challenge of creation and adoption. So maybe I'm wondering if I could get some feedback on the adoption. To what extent do you see pushback on adoption of open textbooks within your institutions? Or is it generally sort of generally supported, but or is there actual sort of active negative feelings about open textbook adoption? Yeah, lack of awareness, as someone said. And do you think that more awareness is going to be is going to change that? And let me put that a different way. I'm about as excited as I've been about a possibility in many a year, and that's for open textbooks. I just see the time now. There seems to be a lot of momentum going in this direction. Yeah, open does not equal poor quality, and I think this is, one of the issues is sort of proving that out. I know the people at the Open Textbook Network and University of Minnesota are really keen on working around sort of vetting or approving or giving some seal of approval. Right, yeah, so without kind of some sense of, this is worthwhile, just to take some random open textbook off the internet, not sure that it's good enough, and faculty, if Wiley or Macmillan or whoever publishes or Pearson publishes a book, you kind of know that it's probably pretty good, but if it's open, you just have no idea. So having that mechanism to approve that. Yeah, it's interesting. So this is University of North Texas said skepticism can only be met with real examples of books that are at least as good as the commercial ones. And what's interesting is the studies that have been done that I've seen, and I don't have the details at hand, but the studies certainly in Utah that I think Lumen Learning was involved in suggested that the outcomes of students who are in classrooms with open textbooks are equivalent to the ones with non-open textbooks. And so the quality, the proof is in the pudding there. Getting good examples in faculty. Working with. Okay, now the flood's coming in. I'm gonna have to speed up my reading. Getting good example in faculty hands is a great job for subject librarians. Here's a question for you guys about that. What is the print versus digital textbook split? Do you need the open textbook to be in print, or do you want it just in digital, or does that matter? Sure, there's such thing as open print. Okay, let me see if I can read some of these things. Print needs to be available, but most students will use E. So here's another note that's interesting. I think this is, again, one of the biggest pushes for open textbooks is that students worry more about textbook cost than tuition, which is, I hadn't heard that expressed that way exactly, but absolutely. Yeah, same or better learning results. Print is important. Students want print. Yeah, okay, good. I'm happy to hear that. I've always, at Pressbooks, we've always taken the approach that print is always going to be an important part of the book ecosystem, and that's the approach we've taken. Right. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through here to see if there's any other notes. So someone else here, so that's Mary Billings, I'm not sure, or Marilyn Billings, excuse me, not sure which institution she's from, but they had done some work similar to the Utah analysis showing that same or better learning results, and that I think this is super important as well, that the faculty and students got a lot more excited about the engagement with the learning materials when they were open. Amen to Marilyn, better online note-taking systems. That's something I'm super excited about as well. Yeah. Cool. Someone asked whether Pressbooks can take a PDF and work backwards to create other formats. Or does it want docx? Unfortunately not. PDF is I suppose that some PDFs have some kind of structured content in them, but generally they don't, especially if it's the kind of PDF that you want to work backwards from. Chances are it's not a well-structured document, and so it's very difficult to get content out of that. It can be done, but it's labor-intensive. So here's a note: having no textbook expenses for a four-year experience topped traditional college selection factors such as small class size, high graduation, and world-renowned teachers. That's kind of an amazing stat. I suppose the cynic in me might say that someone else is probably paying tuition, but textbook costs come out of the beer fund. But maybe there's more noble reasons than that. But that's not to say that I saw another stat the other day, which was that for smaller colleges, for community colleges, that textbook cost can be something like 40% of the overall tuition, and you get a huge, that becomes a huge access to education problem. When those kinds of numbers are important for people who aren't getting huge scholarships to go to Harvard or trust funds to pay for it. So it's certainly a real economic issue for probably a very large population. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Of course. $1,600 is a lot for even trust fund kids and parents. Yeah, absolutely. And to me, just looking at it, it's sort of the efficiency or the lack of efficiency of the use of that money that really physics, a good physics textbook. There really isn't a need for every first-year physics student to be paying, $200 every year across the country or the world. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the 600, so someone here commenting that that a textbook that was over $600 and he just didn't go through that course path. Yeah, the properties of physics rarely change. It's true. So how enthusiastic are you guys? How positive are you about open textbooks going forward? Do you think? I have this feeling that we're right at the beginning of a very big wave. Do you guys feel the same way, or is it sort of, have you seen this discourse around open textbooks to be sort of growing in momentum, or is that just because I'm looking at it more closely now? Yes, WPK, let's do this thing. Super, great, good. Well, I guess we're coming on to the hour. So I have sort of a request for any of you who's interested in this. What I'm in the process of exploring is looking at the other kinds of components that need to happen for a really vibrant ecosystem to develop. And I'd love to I have some ideas about that I can go into some more detail, but it'd be probably a bit easier with one-on-one calls. So I urge all of you to send me an email. I'm sure Sarah can provide the contact information. I would love to talk to all of you individually about what you guys are thinking about, and it'll help inform what I'm trying to think about in terms of building helping sort of bring together people to build what I think could be a platform to help make this happen. But even if I'm wrong about that, I would love to have feedback from all of you, because I think really there's a lot of different players who need to sort of be partnering on figuring out how to get this done in a big way. And I guess my feeling is that librarians are just really are right kind of in the middle of how this can happen.
Thanks so much, Hugh. I will follow up with the participants on the call with your contact information and with the recording of the webinar as well. And I'll send a copy or I'll send a link to the recording back to you as well, and so that you can share it out. But I think this was a great conversation. We really appreciate your coming to talk to us today, and I think it's clear that there's a lot of excitement around open textbooks and about what Pressbooks is doing. So we really thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm just seeing some notes coming through. So thanks everyone for all this feedback. And I think it's this last note here from Amy. I don't know how you pronounce that in the United States. I'd say filetro, but probably that's wrong. But that we need to find an easier, and she says source, but really it's just I think the whole thing needs to be easier and clearer, and right now it's very complicated and it's sort of all over the world, or all over the place. So it's time to figure out how to make this easy and understandable for everyone. So thanks so much for everyone. I urge any of you who think I'm on the wrong track or on the right track or whatever, I would just love to talk to every one of you if you've got some minutes in the next few weeks. So please do send me a note.
Great. Thanks, Hugh.
Okay, thanks for organizing this, Sarah. I really enjoyed it.